Érico Lopes Veríssimo was an important Brazilian writer, born in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. His father, Sebastião Veríssimo da Fonseca, heir of a rich family in Cruz Alta, Rio Grande do Sul, met financial ruin during his son's youth. Verissimo worked in a pharmacy before obtaining a job at Editora Globo, a book publisher, where he translated and released works of writers like Aldous Huxley. During the Second World War, he went to the United States. This period of his life was recorded in some of his books, including Gato Preto Campo de Neve, A Volta de Gato Preto, and História da Literatura Brasileira, which contains some of his lectures at UCLA. His epic O Tempo e o Vento became one of the great masterpieces of the Brazilian novel, alongside Os Sertões by Euclides da Cunha, and Grande Sertão Veredas by Guimarães Rosa. Four of Verissimo's works, Time and the Wind, Night, Mexico, and His Excellency, the Ambassador, were translated into the English language by Linton Lomas Barrett. He was the father of another famous writer of Rio Grande do Sul, Luís Fernando Verissimo. Biography. Érico Verissimo was the son of Sebastião Veríssimo da Fonseca and Abigail Lopes Veríssimo. He was born into a wealthy family that went bankrupt, and consequently didn't manage to complete secondary school because of the need to work. Verissimo settled in Cruz Alta as the owner of a drugstore, but was unsuccessful. He then moved to Porto Alegre in 1930, willing to live solely by selling his writing. There he began to live around writers of renown, such as Mario Quintana, Augusto Maia, Guilhermino Acute Sar and others. In the following year, he was hired to occupy the position of secretary of edition of the Revista de Globo, of which he would become editor in 1933. He then undertook the whole editorial project at Editora Globo, propelling its nationwide fame. He published his first work, Fantoches, in 1932, with a sequence of short stories, mostly in the form of short plays. The following year, he saw his first great success with the romance Clarissa. Verissimo married in 1931 to Mafalda Volpe and had two children, Luís Fernando Verissimo, also a writer, and Clarissa. In 1943, he moved with his family to the United States, where he gave lessons on Brazilian literature in the University of Berkeley, until 1945. Between 1953 and 1956 he was director of the Department of Cultural Affairs of the Organization of American States, in Washington, D.C. For these trips and from the stay in the U.S., two books originated, Gato Preto Campo de Neve in 1941, and De Volta de Gato Preto in 1947. His historical trilogy O Tempo e o Vento is considered as his greatest work, written in the period of 1949 to 1961, from which arose primordial characters such as Ana Terra and Capitão Rodrigo that went on to become popular amongst his readers. In 1965 Verissimo published the romance O Senhor Embexador, in which he reflected upon the deviations of Latin America. In the romance Incidente Amanteres, written in 1971, he traces a parallel with Brazilian politics with the use of fantasy, with the rebellion of corpses during a strike of the gravekeepers, in the fictitious city of Antares. After suffering from a heart attack in 1975, Verissimo was unable to complete the second volume of his autobiography entitled Solo de Clarineta, which was intended to be a trilogy, apart from a romance which would be entitled A Hora do Sétimo and Joe. His works have been compiled in three different occasions. Obras de Érico Verissimo 1956. Obras completas 1961, Ficção completa 1966. Erico Verissimo's books have been translated to German, Spanish, Finnish, French, Dutch, Hungarian, Indonesian, English, Italian, Japanese, Norwegian, Romanian, Russian and Czech. Short stories Fantoches, As Master meu Filho, O Artark, Os Devaneios de General, novels Clarissa 1933, Caminhos Cruzados 1935, Música ao Lunch 1936, Lugar ao Sol 1936, Os Lírios de Campo 1938, Saga 1940, O Resto e Silencio 1943, O Tempo e o Vento, O Arquipelago 1961, Noite 1954, a short story written by a solitary music teacher that sees himself transported to the past, to the year of his birth, where he falls in love for a beautiful woman. O Senhor Embexador 1965, O Prisioneiro 1967, Incidente Amanteris 1971, Children's Literature A Vida de Joana Dark 1935, As Aventuras do Avião Vermelho 1936, Os Tres Porquinhos Pobres 1936, Rosa Maria no Castelo Encantado 1936, MEUABC 1936, As Aventuras de Tibacuera 1937, O Urso com Música na Barriga 1938, A Vida do Elefante Basilio 1939, Ao Travao S. Tres Porquinhos 1939, Vargem Aurora do Mundo 1939, Aventuras no Mundo da Higuaín 1939, Gente e Bichos 1956, Travel Literature Gato Preto M. Campo de Neve 1941, A Volta de Gato Preto 1946, Mexico 1957, Israel M. Abril 1969, Autobiographies O Escritor Diante do Espelho 1966, Solo de Clarineta, Memórias 1973, Solo de Clarineta, Memórias 1976, Essays, Brazilian Literature, An Outline 1945, Mundo Veloz Importera 1973, Breve Historia da Literatura Brasileira, Biographies Certo Henrique Bertazzo 1972, Translations Romances The Ringer by Edgar Wallace 1931, The Crimson Circle by Edgar Wallace 1931, The Door with Seven Locks by Edgar Wallace 1931, Jahrgang 1902 by Ernst Gleiser 1933, Point Counterpoint by Aldous Huxley 1934, Kleiner Man Was None by Hans Verlader 1937, We Are Not Alone by James Hilton 1940, Goodbye Mr. Chips by James Hilton 1940, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck 1940, Portrait of Jenny by Robert Nathan 1942, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? By Horace McCoy 1947, Then and Now by Somerset Maugham 1948, The Clue of the New Pin by Edgar Wallace 1956, Short Stories Psychology by Catherine Mansfield 1939, Bliss by Catherine Mansfield 1940, Her First Ball by Catherine Mansfield 1940,